Sure. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to speak to and to learn from this terrific group. The Zuckerberg quote is, in a sense, so powerful because he is such a symbol of what this city can do, as well as a symbol of a missed opportunity. His story, the story of borrowed ideas, perhaps, at the very least an exchange of ideas at close corridors, leading towards an innovation that connected the world, is itself a symbol of how powerful cities remain in the 21st century. That in fact globalization and new technologies is not making the need for face-to-face contact irrelevant. In fact, his ideas came about precisely because of face-to-face interaction, and the dense corridors in Cambridge admittedly helped make that happen. Now the power of face-to-face contact, the power of learning from people around us is why Boston continues to thrive. Right? It's the fact that globalization and new technologies have increased the returns to being smart, they've increased the returns to innovation, and we at our heart are a social species that gets smart by being around other smart people. That's what enables this metropolitan area to thrive. And it's why our educated workforce, which Peter Mead stressed so appropriately, is such a critical ingredient of our success. Cities, like countries, rise or fall on their human capital. And if you want to understand why the economic past of Boston has been so different from that of Buffalo or Detroit, you need not look further than just the tremendous asset of the people in the city. Now, the skills in the city are important, of course, not just in terms of the entrepreneurship, but also in terms of the government. Because, in fact, Boston has had a long tradition of really very, very innovative, fine governments, in part because of the tremendous human capital that serves in that capacity as well. Now, while we have this strength that is the centerpiece of where we are as a metropolitan area, we also have a weakness. And that weakness is so epitomized by Zuckerberg's comment, which is we are not the most entrepreneurial place on the planet. In fact, one typical measure of entrepreneurship, which is average establishment size, by that measure, Suffolk County has the lowest level, right? It has the highest average establishment size of any large county in this country, right? That's something to worry about. And indeed, it's at the 20th anniversary of Annalena Saxenian's book called Regional Advantage, where she compared Silicon Valley and Route 128, right? And she compared why Silicon Valley had, which had looked so similar to Route 128 in the 60s, why it had pulled ahead so magnificently. And the story that she told, which was very similar to a story that the economist Ben Chinitz had told in the 50s about why New York was reinventing itself and Pittsburgh was not, was a story of small, nimble firms that cultivated entrepreneurship, that were breeding grounds for new people to start up. Whereas Route 128 was large, more vertically integrated companies, occupying separate campuses, great places in terms of static productivity, terrible places in terms of long-run innovation and long-run entrepreneurship. Right? And this is a part of Boston's DNA as well, that we are corporate in many ways. Now, that's not universally true, and we have had many successes in this area, but it is something for us to constantly worry about, that indeed the most important type of human capital for long-run economic success is the entrepreneurial sort, is the set of skills and inclinations that make you want to go out and start your own company, make you want to do something new. And that's something which, we may have a lot of book learning, but we're not always so great in that particular form of human capital. Now, what in the world can we do to improve things? What actually are the public policy recommendations for this? I heartily applaud the BRA's efforts with the Innovation District. I think it's important that government is standing behind the role for small startups. There isn't a great track record, though, of innovation coming about from the top down. Right? The essence of new ideas is that they're incredibly unpredictable. And governments are not naturally made to be venture capitalists. Right? At best, governments can do is they can attract and train smart people and then more or less get out of their way. Now, I still do think we're not doing all that we can to attract and train smart people. Right? In fact, one of the most important areas in which we're failing is, in fact, the price of housing. That when I spent the last year chairing the Citizens Committee for the Future of Boston, and I spent a lot of time talking to young people who were deciding not to stay in Boston. And the number one factor that you heard from them is, look, I'm paying New York prices, and I'm not getting New York fun. Okay? That, in fact, it's not the lack of economic opportunity. As Peter said correctly, the economy in this region remains remarkably strong despite the recession. It's the fact that it is darned expensive to live here, and the tea shuts down at 1 a.m., right? And they don't have anywhere near the same club scene. Now, that's a recipe from my book for, in fact, thinking about two types of barriers, one of which is the barriers which make it difficult to build. And I want to give the BRA actually a lot of credit for this. Whereas Bloomberg's administration has made a lot of sound about how much building that they've done. The BRA actually has done it. And if you want to understand why Boston for the last 10 years grew at a faster rate than the state of Massachusetts did for the first decade since the 1870s, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've just allowed more building, because the real estate determines the growth of an area. Right? The number of people in an area is directly related to the number of homes that are being built. And the BRA allowed those homes to be built, facilitated the construction, and that helped the city to grow. But we can certainly do more, and we can do more across the river as well, where in fact other areas have regimes that continue to be profoundly anti-growth. And that's something that's holding the region back, because every time we say no to a new development, we're saying no to families that want to live in this region, we're saying no to businesses who want to start out, and we're making life more expensive for the ordinary people who want to live and find their futures in Greater Boston. We also need to think about the rules that stymie entrepreneurship in other areas. And I personally got involved in the great food truck crusade that Mayor Menino and then City Council President Mike Ross took up. But I think there are lots of areas in which we have accreted centuries of regulation that make it difficult to start new firms. A recession is a great time to take a hacksaw to some of those things. And I think it's really appropriate that we ask ourselves, and this is not an issue of city regulations alone. This is an issue of regulations that the state legislature puts on small businesses throughout the Commonwealth. And this is something that we really should think about. And then I think, last of all, we want to focus on the aspect of attracting and training smart people that is really the direct province of government. Those quality of life measures. Are we getting enough entrepreneurship in government? Are we doing enough to come up with new ways to make the city exciting and fun? And I give Mayor Menino's administration enormous credit for actually involving lots of smart people in city government and allowing them to innovate. In fact, Governing Magazine's 2 People of the Year are members of the Menino administration this year for their innovative work in technology and government. But we can do more, clearly, and we also can continue to do more to fix the schools aspect of things, right? We really need to let the same competition and innovation that works well to make cities great places to eat out also be great places to educate our children. And I think that's really the hope of things like charter schools, is really that we can harness more of that in a way that lifts up the bottom fifth as well as letting the top fifth eat really fantastic food. So thank you again for including me in this conversation.